Hello everybody and welcome to my next Get a Life moment with myself, Lisa Davies, and I'm delighted to be joined today by the maestro himself, Lincoln Noel. Welcome, Lincoln.
Good morning. It's lovely. It's lovely to be on Get a Life. It really is. So thank you very much for inviting me, Lisa.
So I came across Lincoln at a recent friend's book launch, Lady Adi, a little shout out for her there, where you were a master of ceremonies and you were also playing that beautiful piano that's in front of you. But for those people who don't know you, who are watching today, who is Lincoln Noel?
Lincoln Noel is a pianist and a piano teacher. It's funny, I described myself in the opening paragraph of the book I'm writing as a jobbing pianist. So I'm a pianist and a piano teacher, but playing the piano sort of has taken me into all sorts of areas of style. So I started out as a classical pianist. I took piano lessons first on the first day of reception, age 4, with the same teacher to 16.
Really?
Yeah. So Molly Tomlin was my first piano teacher. I got a scholarship at 15, which took me to London for 2 years to study with a real elite teacher. My intention was always to get to the Royal Academy of Music, and he was attached to the academy. And then I went to the academy for 4 years. So with that kind of background, you know, you think, well, yeah, totally classical. And yes, it was. But the first part of my life was interspersed with church life, and not the black church, but a straightforward English Baptist church. And that church put on lots of performances. So I'd learnt the art of putting on a performance. The church also had a black and white minstrel show, which I was part of for 6-7 years, which introduced me to a whole load of music, like old time music hall, folk songs, Rodgers and Hammerstein, all the musicals. You know, I got to really understand Mary Poppins, the Wizard of Oz, because we appeared in a sort of a children's section, and then in between one of those sections, I would play the piano, which taught me how to deal with pianos and audiences. So I understood how to perform, how to present, and how to deal with an audience, and also how to deal with terrible pianos. I played every type of terrible piano in the whole wide world. So, because obviously we had a fantastic church hall with a church piano, which of course looked like a set of bad teeth, played like it as well. And then of course we went to we went on tour. We did a week in November, first week of November, leading into always used to be the Remembrance Sunday weekend that we led into, and then we go on tour to February and play lots and lots of old people's homes, residential care homes, and of course they all had pianos that were terrible, and I learned to deal with those. So with all of that going on, with my classical background, all those worlds came together when I became a professional. So in my 4th year at the Royal Academy, I got asked to do a show in the West End. They needed a black pianist to play one of the roles, because the show was about a singer. Some of your viewers will remember Paul Robeson, and he made the song Old Man River famous in a show called Showboat. And I had to be Paul Robeson's pianist, who had to be black. So I got the call and ended up in the West End, which meant that I suddenly learnt how the high end of performance worked. A green boy from Northampton, albeit with some performance experience, suddenly thrust into the top end. And if you're doing a West End show, you have to do TV, you have to do radio. I did a photo shoot. I actually took calls on Radio London on a phone in. And suddenly, after an 8-week job, I came out with this whole skill set that made me employable. Went back to music college, saw the students who turned their nose up at my theatre experience, which incidentally paid me very handsomely. So that's suddenly I was employable. And when I graduated in year 4, with the great Yehudi Menuhin shaking my hands.
Oh wow!
Yeah, he was the first person I watched as a child. I saw Yehudi Menuhin in Corby Festival Hall as a 7-year-old, dressed up with his tails, white bow tie, shiny shoes. And I said to my dad, that's what I want to do. Dress up, wear nice clothes and play for lovely people. So to finish my studies with Yehudi Menuhin presenting my GRAM, Graduate of the Royal Academy of Music, on my last day, that was a massive, massive thing for me.
Absolutely.
And then
I'm blown away by that. I'm blown away by that because I have an absolute love of music. I always wanted to learn to play the piano, and unfortunately my parents at the time were like, no. So I'm still on about chopsticks. Do you know what I mean? That's my so I did make sure. Yeah.
You're the one that everybody plays is.
Yes, that one as well.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I realised I ended up a couple of years after I graduated up in Bolton, doing an old time music hall. Obviously, the good folk of Lancashire, but people further north of England are more traditional generally than they are in the south, and that's actually something that really struck me about going to London. I'm in Northampton. I live in Middle England. I live a really Middle England British life. As I said, with the minstrels, I was playing all those shows. I knew old time music hall. You know, by the time I was 11, 12, I could sit down and play, you know, Daisy Bell and My Old Man Should Follow the Van and all the tunes that people wanted to sing. And when I went down to London's so cosmopolitan, I couldn't see the English DNA. That actually really threw me. So when I graduated very soon, I decided to base myself back in Northampton, because I was getting people are obsessed with this concentration of being in London to be a performer. And although I played in the West End, and then I went back and did another show called Ain't Misbehaving in the West End, I was also getting work out of London, and which, you know, lowly Bolton gave me some great opportunities. And funnily enough, the cast I was with in Bolton, most of them now are famous. You know, Sue Cleaver is Eileen on Coronation Street. There's Leslie Nichol, who's the cook in Downton Abbey. Amanda Hoare, her first husband was a gentleman that was misbehaving, and I had to give him a good talking to, and his name is Neil Morrissey.
Oh, wow. Name dropping here.
I had to put him up against the wall and give him a good telling off, because he had made her. They had just had their first son, Sam, who's now in his 30s, and he was a little bit, still is, a bit of a player, and he was in a show called Boone at the time with Michael Elphick.
Yes,
so he was pretty famous at the time, but none of those actors were really known. Cliffy, who I did some acting as well in. I did a show called Choo Choo Chiboogie, which was all about Louis Jordan. It was all sort of very sort of rock and roll, jump jive, really sort of the kind of music I always dreamt about playing but never got a chance to play. And I had to play the part of a gangster. So a piano playing gangster.
How juicy.
It was totally juicy. Lisa, I had to wear a cool suit. I mean, if you can imagine Bugsy Malone. So I've got a cool suit on, and of course I've got to be an American. I've got to be a New York American gangster. And of course I work for Fat Sam, because he would be Fat Sam, and we own the club. And you know, we get up to all sorts of things. And of course, because it's a gangster show, I got to do a few fights. So I actually got to carry a toy gun. There's a lovely scene where I actually have to say the words that everybody dreams about saying. Everybody freeze! You know.
I love
it. You know, I used to forget to pick my wages up every Thursday. I was having so much fun. And in that particular cast was a girl called Sharon D. Clark, who had a record in the charts. I want to give you devotion.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, get this, Lisa. We cancelled a show so that she could do Top of the Pops. And at the same time, we did a promo on Granada Television. So on this particular night, She was on top of the pops. I think it got to number 4 in the charts. And then our show came out in their kind of arts what's on about 10:30, just after Trevor McDonald. We had done our show, and then I went out into a restaurant, and I was on the opening credits playing a little bit like what I just played, because that was how one of the songs started. And a girl rushed up to me and said, "I just seen you on telly." And all these girls rushed around me, and I thought, oh. And then we went to the disco afterwards, and the DJ played Sharon's tune. So, I mean, you know, girls love to dance around their handbag. So imagine we're dancing in that lovely disco circle. Sharon is in the middle, singing, mouthing the words to her song, which is playing on the tannoy. And after about the first chorus, I couldn't do it. So I had to go to the DJ and say, "She's here." So we stopped the record again, played the B-side. She got the microphone and sang it live.
Oh, fabulous.
For the whole crowd. I mean, you know, they'd have to go through the agents. So it was great. And Sharon, of course, Sharon D. Clark has ended up in shows like The Lion King. For those of you who watch Holby City, very, very big black girl who was a nurse in Holby City with hair a bit like Karen Wheeler on Soul to Soul. Yes. Yeah, and she actually sang on the. She's lost a lot of weight now, and she sang in the BBC V-Day celebrations in May this year as one of, along with Catherine Jenkins. So she's done really well, and another guy called Kwame, who's the artistic director at the Young Vic, and all these guys were up in lowly Bolton.
There's nothing wrong with the Northwest. I've got my claim to fame. My claim to fame is when I was at school, I played the double bass, and I had a beautiful old jazz bass player as a teacher. And then when I moved up to upper school, I got this guy who was 6'7". I didn't quite gel with him as well. He was very classical, but the old boy, who was proper chilled out jazz double bass player, he got me a place for a while at the Manchester Youth Orchestra. And I was like, oh, but my only claim to fame was playing the Chapness Hall in Rochdale. So there you go.
Right.
But yeah, I did get to do some Saturday mornings with the Manchester Youth Orchestra.
Wow.
So that was my claim. There's nothing wrong with the Northwest. I went.
No, love it. I mean, my best girls live in Chorley. I actually went to the Hitman and Her at Camelot Park.
Wow.
I was always up there. Northampton Town got trounced by Rochdale at Spotlands. It wasn't. That was the downside of my time on Choo Choo Shiboogie. But no, I go. It's funny because the first time was Christmas 1989, and Bolton felt like a real cotton mill town then. The Bolton now, the Northwest. I know people talk a lot about Manchester and the Hacienda, the Happy Mondays, the Stone Roses. There was a really fantastic scene in Manchester. I mean, Manchester United weren't doing great at the time, but I did meet a certain Mr. Ferguson. I was being interviewed.
Oh, these people.
Like, you wait to this. Mr. Ferguson was appearing on BBC television, and I was being interviewed on BBC Manchester, and we were in the public conveniences, and I told him what I did, and he explained what he did, and I said, "Mr. Ferguson, I know who you are," and he said, "I'm looking for a piano teacher," and I said to him, "I'm really sorry, Alex, I'm no good to you because I live in Northampton." One of my students, who's Manchester United mad, got married in 2013 in Manchester and at Old Trafford. And I went up as MC and played and saw the team and met Mr. Ferguson again, Sir Alex, and reminded him about this conversation. And we had a conversation in the room where the managers go for their glass of wine. And he said, "Can you give me your card?" So I gave him my card. Now, I said to him, "Why do you want my card now?" And he touched his nose and he said, "Hey, laddie, I'm not telling you." And that weekend was the weekend he announced that he was retiring from managing Manchester United. I'm waiting for him to ring me up for that refresher lesson still. But obviously he's got other things to occupy him with the team. Yeah. I mean, at the time of recording this, you know, Manchester United suffered a heavy defeat at Tottenham, and then we'll move on because Manchester United fans won't want me to remind them of that fact. But
my husband will love it. My husband will love it. He's a Chelsea fan, so.
But no, the Northwest is a fabulous area. I've spent a lot of time in Yorkshire as well, and Scarborough and Leeds and York and all the rest of it. But I kind of feel that what Leeds needs that Manchester has is there's several iconic bands. I mean, we could talk about New Order and the Happy Mondays and Oasis, and going even back to the 60s. Manchester was always really cool, really sexy, had the nightclubs. Leeds needs the football team to do well, and it needs an iconic band. And then everything kind of takes, like the Arctic Monkeys with Sheffield, you know, it's funny how all that kind of rocks and rolls. But, you know, even up in Blackburn, there was a really great scene. Obviously, we had some great nights out in Preston and Chorley. And sort of when I came back and spoke to my friends in Northampton and talked about how happening the Northwest was, you know, and then we actually ended up going up there for a night out. And they said, Lincoln, I didn't realise it was so good. And yet people were talking about London, but Manchester has a really great rhythm, and I've done some great things in Manchester.
Yeah, I mean, one of my first jobs was for a dancewear specialist and stage makeup specialist. So I got to meet quite a lot of people that went to what was called then the Oldham Theatre Workshop. And most people who went and went through that journey finished up in Coronation Street or, you know, on mainstream sort of TV or stage. So I did get to meet some exciting people, but not quite in the same way that you have, not quite in the same way.
It's just all in passing. Well, the thing is, at the end of the day, they're all just normal people.
Of course.
mean, you know, really, I mean, one person who was in the Black and White Minstrels with me for 1 year only is a young lady who now lives not far from here, and I teach her kids occasionally, is Jo Wiley. We were in the same Sunday school. So I've known Jo all her life, and I did her wedding. And that was a real game changer because Jo, people who really know Jo know that she's got a sister with learning difficulties, Frances. And Frances just would not get ready that day. And Jo ended up being 40 minutes late in church. Now, I always used score and I always played nice classical music. And that, because I had to just think on my feet, I started a sing-along. I'm not sure. People tell me that I played Bohemian Rhapsody, but I don't think I did. But I did get the place rocking. And just to give a sense of the timeline, Princess Diana, who also, because here at the back of me is Althorpe, where she's laid to rest. Her brother got married the week before.
Right.
And everyone in the village was breathless with excitement because her and Prince Charles went to Charlie Spencer's first wedding. So that was a very happening place to be. So they weren't worried about this bloke sneaking in on the organ to play, because generally when you go into a village and you play the organ, the resident organist and the village committee and the verger and all those very busy people who make a fuss, because they were worn out from last week. So I kind of went in, and it was only at the end that they said, who the hell was that guy on the piano, on the organ? You know, and it didn't stop there. Her mum Christine said, would you play for a couple of hours at the reception? And I got there about 5 o'clock at a place called the Broomhill, which is on the 5199. And a couple of hours ended up being all night. I think I played for 7 hours. And once again, they just sang their heads off. I didn't know. This is where that whole black and white, the music from the Black and White Minstrel Show and all the other influences came in. Because whatever people said, can you do that? I was just there. So that was kind of July 91. And I decided from now on, I wasn't going to take reams and reams of music with me. I was just going to go with the music and the situation. And whether I'm at the church organ or I'm sitting at the piano in a civil ceremony, or as I was with Lady Adie's book launch, you know, that's how I became the instinctive pianist that I am, because people actually they want to see me sitting at a grand piano with these lovely clothes on, but they actually remember the naughty stuff.
Yes.
You know, there's the bride's mum that walks in, and she's got a hat that's so wide that really it could work for NASA. And she's feeling really pleased with herself when she walks in. And I will always, sometimes will slip into God Save the Queen. And people love all of that. There was one moment in a wedding where this girl decided she had to use the toilet. There's one of these kind of girls. This is the kind of girl that other girls hate. You know, it's all there.
Yes.
The dress is
got it all going on.
It's all going on. And of course, all the boys are distracted. And as she slipped past me, because she was as dozy as Dozy, I slipped into a tune called I've Got a Lovely Bunch of Coconuts, which made all the girls feel better. Lots of girls came up to me after and said, do you know what? I felt so much better you had to dig at her. And because it went straight over her head. And people just, as long as you're not insulted, because you want everybody to be included. Yeah. People just love that kind of naughty nonsense. And because obviously the registrars and the vicars know me, they know that I know where the line is. Yeah. And there's that element of pantomime, and they all play along. And if you're at the church organ, you've got this huge instrument, which is capable of so much. And I remember a vicar, he said, I'm going to give you the wink. And I said, I'll be ready for you, Father Tony, don't worry. And as he came down the aisle to find the groom to tell him we were about to start, I was... Obviously, I will preface this by saying that I always check, because I always have a meeting with my brides and grooms first. Yeah. If it's not really going to be appropriate with those characters, then I don't do those things. But generally, people just, because we're just waiting. We just wait for a gorgeous girl with a white dress on and a face full of slap and high heels she can't walk in to come down the aisle. So I'm just filling in the time while we're waiting.
Yeah, it just brings so much joy. I know this is going to be an impossible question to answer. What is your favourite piece of music to play?
It's an easy question to answer because it's for release. I play a little bit of it.
Yeah. I can play a little bit of that. That is one of the very... I can play a little bit of that. Not like you will. Yes, it doesn't sound like that when I play it.
Yeah, that's the favourite. That was the first ever. I teach the piano as well, and children always want to play what other people know. And it was the first big. I remember going to the shop. We used to have a shop in Northampton called Midland Music, and I went into there. I think it was about 5 or 6 at the time. And I asked for this piece of music. I didn't know what it was called. I sang it to the man, and he went, oh. And he went and got it. Now, a couple of years later, my mum wrote Huey Green of Opportunity Knocks, and I auditioned for the show twice in the 70s. Unfortunately, it took them a year to get back to me, so I didn't get an opportunity to appear on the program because the process of going through all the auditions. But what I learned from the auditions, and I've always said this, is that there were so many people in that room who were terrible. I mean, there were comedians who just couldn't remember their punchline. There were singers who terrified the auditioning panel just by opening their mouths and singing the first note. Dancers who were everywhere except on the beat. It was just extraordinary. And quite cryptically, my father said, as we drove, this was in Birmingham, we drove home from the Royal Angus Hotel, and he turned to me and said, do you know what, Lincoln? They could have made a TV series out of that. Now, my dad died in 1992, unfortunately, on my 27th birthday. And he never lived to see Pop Idol, The X Factor, Britain's Got Talent. Because in reality, when we watch these TV talent shows now, the best programs are the auditions.
Yes, when it's completely awful.
It's completely awful. And there it was in Suite 3 of the Royal Angus Hotel. I've got my frilly bit on my shirt that everybody wore in the 70s with my bow tie. I've told the teacher that I'm taking the day off to go to Birmingham to audition for Huey Green. And of course, it's been announced to the whole school in assembly. You know, everyone assumes I'm going to be famous by the weekend. I remember saying to my sister at the time that maybe I'll get to play a song with Lena Zavaroni, or she'll get to do a duet with Lena Zavaroni, and maybe I'll end up on the Morecambe and Wise Christmas special for Christmas. You know, we had all these dreams about all these things we were going to do, and of course, real life sort of kicks in. But that's I played Fur Release for both auditions, and that has always been my number one piece. So if I ever play for people, it's the first. Even if I'm in a big concert, I still will sit down and play Fur Release because it's my ultimate. Yeah.
Interestingly, when my daughter learned to play the piano, she was insistent that she wanted to learn the theme tune to Lord of the Rings. Nothing simple then. So she took weeks. Thankfully, one of my clients, her hubby, I don't know if you've ever come across it, is Roderick Dunk, and my client was lead violinist of the BBC Concert Orchestra. So I had a good connection to teach her the piano, which was useful. But yeah, she was absolutely determined that she was going to play Lord of the Rings. But there we go. So I mean, what an amazing journey it's been to this point, Lincoln. So what are you working on now at this moment in time?
At this moment in time, I'm working on two things. I'm preparing to do a wedding for 8 a week on Saturday for a young lady who was going to have, 62,000 people at her wedding for a big celebration, like we all were. Yeah. And I'm just, it's funny, we put off, I always meet every couple I play for. So I'm meeting her tonight. We're going to speak on Zoom. She lives here in Northamptonshire, and I'll be playing at a place where I've been resident for 26 years now, at Whittlebury Park, where I sort of helped to build up the wedding business. So I'm working on that. And all through the summer in lockdown, aside from playing online, I've been writing my book, which is going to be called The Making of the Weddings Maestro, where I detail my journey professionally, personally, through my weddings. So I did, you see, when you're doing what you're doing, I mean, you do what you do and you do what you do brilliantly. You don't think about what you're doing as being exceptional. You just do it. I got a phone call from a guy, from a minister who I helped out. I mean, I was playing for him for a good couple of years, and he turned up the day I was waiting for my new racing bike. So I thought he was New Lick Cycles at the door, chain smoking with clutching to music, and he's got the bridal march and the wedding march in his hand. And he said, Lincoln, can you play these? And I said, oh, yeah. He said, great. And he breathed a big sigh of relief, and he said, could you play a wedding? And I said, yes. I said, when is it? Now, this was Thursday, and he said, Saturday. I said, yeah. I turned up. It's only after he'd gone and my bike had appeared and I'd ridden all around Dustin here in where I live, that it suddenly occurred to me, number one, I'd never actually played those tunes seriously. Yeah. In jest, yes. And I'd never done a wedding. So, and I was 13 years old at the time. But I'd been playing church services for a good 3 years at that point. So all I was going to do was play The Lord's My Shepherd, Love Divine or Love's Excelling, play some nice music at the beginning. The piano, because King's Heath was a very small church, unlike College Street, which was where we did all the shows and the minstrels, etc. They had a little piano at the back. People filed in from the back, went past the piano, didn't give me a second glance. Yeah. It was only when the bride and groom who walked out suddenly looked at this black guy in a suit, a black child sitting at the piano, and did a double take, and then thought, well, there's no reason for us to, he did what was required and we didn't have any concerns. And that was kind of my first wedding. It's only when I sort of have been talking to people and they say, well, how long have you been doing weddings? And I say, well, actually, I've been doing it for 40 years. And they start to kind of do the maths and they think, blimey, you must have been really young But I didn't think anything of it, because as far as I was concerned, from the age of about 6, I decided there's a local paper, the Wellingborough Evening Telegraph, did a feature on me, give a chance to our gifted kids. And there's a photo of me with my front teeth missing, of course. And this is where I learned that the press, you should never believe what the press say, because my parents, my mum's from Barbados and my dad is from Grenada, and they met here in Northampton. And my dad was working with shoes and my mum was a nurse. And they said that Lincoln, they didn't ask me, do I like ice cream? They just said, Lincoln is 6, likes ice cream and Mozart. And I preferred Beethoven. So I was absolutely annoyed. And they said my dad was a Jamaican shoemaker, which really annoyed him because he was from Grenada. And he was actively promoting the profile of Grenada in the town. So I knew immediately that you shouldn't believe, even at the age of 6, everything that you read. And I thought, well, if you're gonna do what you're gonna do, you've got to get used to having your picture taken and being written about yourself. But I thought, right, I've got to play the piano. And I realised when I looked in my dictionary that the reason why they called me Mozart is because at 6, Mozart was writing music.
Absolutely, yeah.
So if people think at the age of 13 I was extraordinary, I wasn't, because as far as I'm concerned, and I say this in the book at the beginning, Mozart had been all over Europe by the time he was 6. And the furthest I had travelled at the age of 13 was Peterborough.
Yeah, but you're catching up with it now, aren't you, Lincoln? You're catching up with it now. Oh, well, I'm sure that is going to be the most amazing book. I'm sure there's some naughty anecdotes in there, shall we say.
There's some good stories.
There's some good stories. So as I ask all of my guests, before we finish for today, what is your top tip for life that you can give to the audience?
Gosh, I've been thinking about my top tip. My top tip, folks, is if you really want to do something, do it. Yeah. Do it. Because there's nothing worse than not doing it and then spending your whole life saying, I wish that I had, or I could have done. Mm. There is no harm in not succeeding. If you try and you don't quite get there, then fine. Then you can go and get a boring 9-to-5 job. We all at some point have to be sensible. I mean, I've been lucky. I play lots of really great engagements. I travel a lot. And I've worked very, very hard to get to this point. But I wanted to be a pianist. And as I got older in my teens, people kept telling me it wasn't possible. Everything is possible. Just give it. What you've got to do is give it your best shot. And the likelihood is that you will succeed. But if you don't succeed, it's not a crime. Yeah. It's not a crime, because the most important thing is you gave it a shot. You gave it your best shot. And then, okay, it didn't work out. I've met loads of guys who almost became footballers, almost became Premiership footballers, nearly became musicians, scientists and all the rest of it, and they've gone and made successes of their lives. More importantly, they've gone on to become good human beings, good parents, good role models, and great activists in the community and the environments in where they work. So the thing is, just get out there and give your dream a try, give it your best shot, and if you fail, hey, it doesn't matter.
Hey, and here we go. You are living proof that you followed that dream, that 6-year-old Mozart, Beethoven, whichever you want to be likened to, and look at you now. So it would be remiss of me not to ask you if you wouldn't mind playing us out with something beautiful.
Well, I'm going to do the song that I did at Lady Ada, because I think it's great for everybody, given the top tip that you asked for. It's a little song called Ain't What You Do, It's the Way That You Do It. It goes like
that follows me round. It follows me round.
It ain't what you do, it's the way that you do it. It ain't what you do, it's the way that you do it. It ain't what you do, it's the way that you do it. And that's what gets results. Take what you do, it's the time that you do it. Take what you do, it's the time that you do it. Take what you do, it's the time that you do it. And that's what gets results. You can try hard, don't mean a thing. Take it easy, and your job will swing. Take what you do, it's the way that you do it. Take what you do, it's the way that you do it. Take what you do, it's the way that you do it. And that's what gets results. Do, da, da, ba, da, ba, da, da.
Brilliant, brilliant. What an absolute joy. What a pleasure it's been spending some time with you today, Lincoln. Thank you so much.
No, Lisa, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me on to get a life moment. It's wonderful. Privileged to be part of this platform.
Thank you.